when the cat's away. Sabrina's invited to a picnic with her friends and magically starts packing goodies. But that's all a waste of time, complete with light-hearted music to trick you into thinking she'll get to go. Instead, Hilda forces her to stay home and practice her conjuring, even though Sabrina can reverse time. Why does she think Sabrina would need to summon a monsoon? They don't need to practice their magic. Hilda's mad at her because she summons a really small storm cloud. Thankfully, this time that she says being a teen witch sucks, Della doesn't bother her. I guess she was busy. She tells Harvey she can't go on the picnic, and Harvey satisfyingly complains about those ants of hers. Gee, it sure is a shame that Sabrina's too cowardly to just cast a spell on her ants to brainwash them into letting her go to the picnic. Like, making them not able to move. She then magically switches places with Salem because he can come and go as he pleases. She hears Zelda say that they are too hard on Sabrina, because it's a lovely day. She pets Salem, and somehow she doesn't get suspicious when Salem thanks her out of habit. She just says she needs to get more sleep. She doesn't even assume that her magic cat casts a spell to be able to talk. Why doesn't he do that? Sabrina scares the dogs by turning back to normal at the picnic. Then arbitrarily, she starts purring, and she has to lie that her stomach was growling. She doesn't want to eat at the picnic because she can't grow a silky coat on pie, and jumps into the river to catch a fish. She clearly says she's happy about the fish, and yet Harvey tells her there's a fish in her mouth and throws it away. This is so forced. I really feel bad for Sabrina. This would make sense if Hilda did this to sabotage her spell, because we've seen her spying on Sabrina before. Harvey sees the cattails she grew, and he hits it with a stick because he somehow mistakes it for a snake. Then he puts a bucket of water on his head, saying that he thinks he needs the water. Then Salem arbitrarily meows at Zelda, when he should know Sabrina didn't want him to. And he pours the milk in the saucer. Hilda just conveniently assumes she had been working her too hard instead of instantly figuring things out. This is trying to be silly, but I feel bad for both of them. I am smiling when she jumps up a tree to hide from a dog, but it's really only the funny music that's making me smile. This is still a depressing story. Sabrina turns into Salem and uses magic to make a ton of leaves fall on Harvey, and she flies home. And Harvey says this has got to be the shortest summer on record. Weatherby sees Salem flying and then changes his mind when yelling at someone on the phone and asks them when they're open. Zelda tells her to get some rest. Hilda hears Salem's voice, and suddenly Zelda complains that it's always her who has to let Salem in. Salem hopes she can at least make it to the bedroom. Why didn't she just warp to her bedroom? So she randomly turns back to her normal self, and yet Salem doesn't return to normal. Hilda says that she has been practicing her magic, and has mastered the most difficult trick in the book, changing into an animal. She kisses Sabrina's face, and she turns back into Salem. It's so confusing to talk about this. And Sabrina says she never wants to switch places with Salem again, and shakes paws with him. Then we see Salem using lipstick on himself, and Sabrina says, "Oh no." I guess this means Salem's a girl in this show, but whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just a pet cat. I just felt sorry for Sabrina in this story, because it felt completely arbitrary that she was forced to stay at home and practice her magic, when clearly she would never actually need to use most of her spells. Why would she need to be able to summon a monsoon, for example? It felt abusive of Hilda to not let her go to a picnic with her friends. You'd think she would have simply brainwashed Hilda into letting her go. Since any time she uses brainwashing in this show, she succeeds in it. I guess she's just completely morally against doing that to Hilda just because she's her aunt, when it's fine for everyone else. There's no logical reason for why the spell that switched Sabrina and Salem would be temporary, and have Sabrina start acting with cat instincts and slowly turning back into a cat. It's not even explained that Hilda sabotaged Sabrina's spell, which could have made sense because she's been established to be spying on her before. But naturally she wouldn't bother doing that when she's not around mortals she could do good deeds for. So somehow Hilda thinks Sabrina mastered the spell that lets her switch places with Salem, even though it was gradually wearing off, and horribly humiliated her in front of Harvey. I hoped she erases memories of that. But Hilda didn't know that. The only reason I was still slightly smiling during the picnic scene was because the silly music was playing. So I can really compliment the presentation of the show compared to the comics. The show can play silly music all at once when dark and depressing stuff is happening, so that I always know when I'm supposed to be finding something funny. It's also better seeing things in motion than seeing still comic panels. It's just too bad the comic is better written than the show in most cases. So the show is harder to motivate myself to watch because it seems like every episode in it is forced. Costume party. Sabrina tells Weatherby that she wants him and Grundy to be chaperones for a costume party while Mr. Lodge is away. Since when do teenagers want their school teacher and the principal to be chaperones for a party they're going to? I mean, why would they think they would need chaperones? Sabrina magically summons a phone booth in the Sahara Desert. So the phone rings and Weatherby gets a call from Mr. Lodge, and he says he had the strangest urge to call him. So he gives him permission for the characters to have a costume party on Creepy Corners. It must just be a nickname, or a witch brainwashed someone into agreeing to call it Creepy Corners. It makes sense that Sabrina wanted a costume party somewhere other than her house with her aunts. Reggie doesn't know that Grundy's her at first, and then hides in his armor. And it's really cheap sounding that they don't even try to make Grundy's voice echo in his armor. Instead it just repeats. Ghosts go into the house, and Weatherby somehow doesn't instantly recognize them as ghosts. And Hilda and Zelda walk in. Hilda says she hates these witches' confabs. I guess they're forced to attend the biannual witches' confab every time by their evil head witch. That's depressing. Sabrina's aunts could have easily told her that they would go here. Then somehow, Grundy doesn't freak out at dating a monster with plenty of feet, despite saying he's light on all of his feet. Jughead dances with a broom, and Sabrina uses magic to disguise the broom, but somehow doesn't make the broom look exactly like who he was dancing with at first. And somehow this doesn't give it all away to him. Weatherby hits Hilda in congratulations, and makes her want to zap him. So Sabrina magically sends him into Reggie. Why is only Reggie suspicious? Weatherby only thinks Grundy looks horrible, and thinks the monster isn't strange. I hate this kind of writing. It should have been explained right away that spy witches magically brainwashed the mortals into not getting suspicious. But they do that to Reggie too then. Why aren't there any other witches than Sabrina's aunts at this witches meeting? Why are monsters showing up? Are they witches too? Veronica wastes time talking to Sabrina, and Sabrina has to run away, and Reggie runs away from a monster. Sabrina's upset at Hilda for zapping Weatherby to Alaska because he somehow thought she was the coach in disguise despite being skinny, and he says that was a cool trick with a smile when he gets warped home, instead of freaking out at magic. I hate when the characters are being impossibly stupid. Reggie wastes time saying it's about time for a showdown, and warns people that this place is full of ghosts, witches, and goblins. People laugh at him despite the monster with multiple legs making it obvious. Sabrina uses magic to brainwash Jughead into taking Reggie's helmet off. And hopefully we're also supposed to believe that the monster is being scared into fleeing, and Hilda and Zelda doing so was also a part of her spell. They run straight through the wall, and at least now Weatherby realizes how crazy that is. Reggie grabs Hilda's broom, and Sabrina uses magic to summon some sheets in light to frame Reggie, and someone tells him he's overdoing the ghost bit. Mr. Lodge shows up, and Veronica hugs him. Sabrina says that if it weren't for Reggie's help, the ghost wouldn't have been half as convincing. Mr. Lodge says he doesn't remember hiring entertainers, and Sabrina summons a monster to the door to hand him a bill, and he says he must be getting forgetful. I don't like that it isn't explained why almost everyone in the costume party is a complete idiot who doesn't immediately catch on that these are real monsters. Reggie being suspicious means it's even more confusing because they aren't all being brainwashed into not questioning it. I have to assume that because the Mystic Spirits are evil enough to want witches to abuse their powers, they're also evil enough to want Reggie to be the only one suspicious so that he'll cause conflict. And they're evil enough that they don't care if people realize they're monsters. But if that was the case, people would have found out about monsters a long time ago. I can understand some of the monsters being dismissed as just kids in costumes, But what about the one with multiple functioning legs? I also hate how arbitrary it is that the monsters even showed up, along with ghosts, to a witch's confab. We don't see the monsters and ghosts using magic. This was just confusing. Eventually, Sabrina has to use magic so that Jughead gets rid of Reggie's helmet. And I wish it was explained with her thinking to herself that part of the spell was that the monsters and witches would be brainwashed into fleeing just because of that. Because his face was always clearly visible, so they never had any reason to think he was a headless night monster. They're not scared of mortals. These are another pair of episodes that I can't say I'd give a thumbs up to.